As Emily's world changed with just one act of kindness, we're reminded how powerful even the smallest gesture can be. Where are you watching this story from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We'd love to see how far Emily's journey has reached. And if her story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. A brand new, even more mysterious chapter is coming tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. She thought he was just homeless. Until the helicopter arrived, Emily Thompson was no ordinary 14-year-old. While most kids her age had lived in the same neighborhood all their lives, Emily had already moved 6 times across 4 different states. From dusty Arizona towns to chilly corners of Vermont, she and her mother had packed their lives into cardboard boxes more times than she could count. They never stayed anywhere long. Just when she started to make friends or grow attached to a place, her mother would give her that look, the one that meant it was time to leave again. Their current home, a small 2-bedroom house tucked between a laundromat and a bakery in suburban Pennsylvania, had become the longest they'd ever stayed in one place. Almost 2 years now. For Emily, it felt like forever. Despite the constant moving, her mom, Jessica, always tried her best. She worked long shifts at a local diner, wore tired smiles that never quite reached her eyes, and rarely spoke of the past. Especially not about Emily's father. Emily had asked about him so many times growing up, but the answer was always the same: he's gone, sweetheart. That's all you need to know. But Emily never stopped wondering. Was he alive? Did he know she existed? Had he left because he didn't love them, or was there something more? Sometimes at night, while staring at the ceiling in the dark, Emily would imagine him. A tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice, maybe a little scruffy. She pictured him playing guitar or sketching in a notebook, the way she liked to do. Maybe they weren't so different. But every time she tried to bring him up, her mother would tense up, shoulders stiff, eyes clouded, and quickly change the subject. Over the years, Emily learned not to ask. Still, the questions never left her. Her 14th birthday was coming up, and with it came the same quiet ritual they always followed. No big party. No balloons or streamers. Just a small cake, a few gifts wrapped in grocery bags, and a warm hug from her mom. Emily didn't mind. She'd grown used to small things feeling special. But this year felt different. The air felt heavier, like something was coming. That morning, as she tiptoed downstairs to find her mother frying eggs and flipping pancakes with an anxious expression, Emily noticed the faint creases of worry deepening on her mother's forehead. She was chewing her lip the way she always did when something was bothering her. "Happy birthday, Em," her mom said, handing her a plate. "Thanks, Mom," Emily replied with a smile. But her eyes lingered on her mother a little longer. There was something in her face that day, something more than tiredness. It looked like fear. Or maybe, the weight of a secret. Emily didn't know it yet, but the story of her father was about to crash into her life like a storm, starting with one simple act of kindness on the way to school. And nothing would ever be the same again. Emily slung her backpack over one shoulder, the birthday card from her mom still tucked into the front pocket. The morning air was cool, crisp, the kind that bit softly at your cheeks and smelled faintly of rain. She liked mornings like this. Quiet. Peaceful. The sidewalk still empty, the world just beginning to stir. As she walked down the familiar path to school, kicking at small pebbles along the way, her thoughts drifted, like they always did, back to her dad. She wondered, again, what he might be like. If he'd recognize her. If he even cared. That's when it happened. The pebble she was kicking veered off the sidewalk, bouncing toward a man slouched near the mouth of an alley. He looked like any other homeless guy she'd seen around town, old clothes, shaggy beard, slumped shoulders. But there was something different about him. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't even holding a sign. He just sat there, rolling the pebble between his fingers. Emily slowed her steps. The man looked up. Their eyes met. And then, he smiled. Not a wide, toothy grin. Not the kind of smile that made you want to run the other way. This smile was sad, quiet, gentle. It reminded her of the way her mom smiled when she thought Emily wasn't looking, like there was a whole story buried behind it. "You must be headed to school," the man said, his voice rough but calm. Emily hesitated, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Yeah, I am." "You don't want to be late," he said, but he made no move to leave. Neither did she. There was something in his eyes, familiar, almost, but she couldn't place it. That's when she noticed how thin he was. His collarbone stuck out like a hanger under his shirt, his face sunken. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. Without thinking, Emily pulled out the sandwich her mom had packed for lunch. "Here," she said, holding it out. He looked surprised, truly surprised, as if no one had done anything kind for him in years. Slowly, he reached out, and she placed the sandwich in his hand. "My mom didn't pack much," she added, "but we're having a big dinner later today. It's my birthday." The man nodded. "Thank you, sweet girl." Then came the rain. A sudden, cold drop splashed against her forehead, followed by another. The man stood, stepped into the alley, and returned with an old umbrella. "Come on," he said. "No need to get soaked." Despite everything her mom had ever warned her, Emily followed him. They stood beneath the umbrella in silence, watching the rain pelt the street. He took a bite of the sandwich, chewing slowly. "When life hits hard," he said, "the body takes the blow to protect the spirit." Emily blinked. "My mom says something like that too." The man looked at her, then spoke again, softly. "What's your name?" Her mom's voice echoed in her mind. Never tell a stranger your name. But something pushed her. Something she didn't understand. "Emily," she said quietly. "Emily Thompson." The man froze. Then, just as suddenly, he turned his back, pulled out a phone, and whispered into it, "I found her." Emily stood frozen in the rain, her heart pounding louder than the thunder rolling through the sky. "I found her." Those 3 words clung to her skin more tightly than the cold droplets sliding down her cheeks. The man, just moments ago gentle and kind, now felt like a stranger again. His back was still to her, the phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and unreadable. She took a step back, then another, until the edge of the umbrella no longer covered her. Rain soaked through her hoodie, but she didn't care. Something was wrong. She turned and ran. By the time she reached school, the first bell had already rung. Students were scrambling into classrooms, shaking rain from their jackets and laughing about the sudden downpour. But Emily couldn't hear any of it. Her thoughts were a storm of their own. Why was he on the phone? Who was he calling? How did he know her name? She slipped into math class, soaking wet, and dropped into her seat. Her friend Jamie shot her a weird look, but Emily didn't say a word. Mr. Harris started droning about algorithms, but her mind was still in that alleyway. She didn't last 10 minutes. With her heart still racing, Emily slid her phone from her pocket and sent a quick text to Jamie, "Cover for me. Please." A second later, Jamie looked at his phone, then nodded discreetly. Emily slipped out of her chair, grabbed a hallway pass off the back shelf, and quietly exited the room. The hallway was empty. Her sneakers squeaked on the polished floor as she made her way toward the exit. She didn't know what she expected to find when she returned to the alley. Maybe the man would still be there. Maybe he'd explain everything. Maybe it was all just a weird misunderstanding. But when she turned the corner, her breath caught. The alley was empty. No man. No umbrella. Not even a trace of the sandwich wrapper. It was like he had vanished. Emily backed away slowly, her pulse racing. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone and called her mom. 1 ring. 2. "Mom," she breathed when her voice came through. "I think something's wrong. I talked to someone this morning. A man. I think I don't know, he knew who I was." She didn't tell her everything, not yet, but enough to send her mom into panic mode. Emily could hear it in her voice. "Go home," her mom ordered. "Right now. Lock the doors. I'm leaving work." Emily obeyed without hesitation. By the time she reached the house, her hands were shaking too badly to get the key in the door. Finally, it clicked. She pushed the door open, and that's when she heard it. A low rumble overhead. Not thunder. She stepped outside again, shielding her eyes from the wind, and froze as a black helicopter descended above her house, wind whipping through the street like a hurricane. The same fear from the alley clenched her chest, only stronger now. Emily stumbled back inside, slammed the door shut, and pressed her back to it. Someone knew who she was. And they were coming. Emily's breath came in short, shallow bursts as she stood in the living room, her back pressed against the front door. The helicopter's blades roared above, shaking the windows, rattling the picture frames on the wall. This couldn't be real. This wasn't some movie. She was just a girl. A girl who gave away a sandwich. And now there was a helicopter hovering over her house. She peeked through the curtains, heart hammering against her ribs. The sleek, black aircraft was beginning to descend, kicking up leaves, dust, and bits of gravel into the air. Emily ducked back just as a sharp knock echoed through the house. "Knock! Knock!" "Emily," a voice called from outside. Calm. Controlled. Male. Emily Thompson. She froze. "I'm not here to hurt you. I promise. I just want to show you something." Emily's mind screamed at her to stay put, to wait for her mom, to hide. But her curiosity burned just as fiercely. She slowly unlocked the door and opened it just enough to peek out. A man stood there. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Blonde buzz cut. Dressed sharply, too sharply to be standing on her porch in the middle of a windstorm. He smiled politely, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "My name's Mason," he said. "I'm a friend of someone who knows your mother. And your father." Emily's stomach dropped. "My, what?" Mason pulled something from his jacket and handed it to her, an old, faded photograph. She took it hesitantly, eyes widening as she stared at the faces. It was her mom. Younger, freer. Smiling like Emily had never seen. And next to her, a boy with long brown hair, holding a guitar. She looked up at Mason, stunned. "Is that?" "Yes. That's your dad," he said softly. "And he wants to see you." Emily's heart twisted. "My mom doesn't talk about him," she whispered. "I know. But he never stopped thinking about you." Mason stepped aside and gestured toward the helicopter. "He's waiting." Logic told her to slam the door. Wait for her mom. Call the cops. But something else, something deeper, told her to go. "If I'm not back before dinner," she said, voice trembling, "my mom's going to freak out." Mason gave a small smile. "Fair enough. We'll have you back before then. Promise." With a deep breath, Emily stepped outside. The wind hit her like a wave, and the roar of the helicopter swallowed everything. Mason guided her toward it, steady and calm. The pilot, a woman with a wide grin and mirrored sunglasses, gave her a thumbs up as Emily climbed aboard. Inside, the cabin was nothing like she expected. Leather seats, glowing lights, polished floors. It felt more like a private jet than a chopper. Mason buckled her in and handed her a headset. "Nervous?" he asked. She nodded. He leaned closer. "You're about to get answers to questions you've been carrying your whole life." And as the helicopter lifted off, taking her higher, farther, deeper into the unknown, Emily realized something. Her life wasn't just changing. It had already changed. The helicopter touched down with a soft thud on a stretch of manicured lawn the size of a football field. Emily pressed her face to the window, wide-eyed. The estate before her looked like something out of a storybook: tall columns, ivy-covered stone walls, windows that glowed like amber. This wasn't just a house. It was a castle. Mason unbuckled her seatbelt and offered a hand. "Welcome," he said with a smile. "Your father's estate." Emily stepped out onto the soft grass, the scent of spring heavy in the air. Her thoughts spun faster than the rotors overhead. "My father lives here?" They entered through tall oak doors into a grand hallway with marble floors and glittering chandeliers. Everything echoed. Every step felt surreal. Mason led her to a quiet sitting room where an older woman in an apron offered her tea and sandwiches. Her hands shook as she reached for a cup. Mason sat across from her, watching her carefully. "I know you have questions," he said. Emily set her cup down. "Yeah. A million." He leaned back, his expression softening. "Let me tell you a story." She blinked, a little caught off guard. "A long time ago," he began, "your dad was the son of a powerful businessman. Rich. Respected. But with power came pressure. He wasn't supposed to fall in love with your mom. She wasn't from that world." Emily stared, heart pounding. "So, what happened?" Mason sighed. "His father found out and tried everything to separate them. He threatened your mom. Scared her into running. She left before she knew she was pregnant with you." Emily looked down. Her fingers curled into fists. "He didn't stop looking for you," Mason continued. "But your mom was good at staying hidden. For years, he didn't know where you were." "So why now?" she asked. "Why come back after all this time?" Mason hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Because of Evelyn." Emily frowned. "Who's that?" "She was someone your father was supposed to marry. Arranged, political, loveless. But Evelyn, she was smarter than most. She saw how much he loved your mom. And after the marriage fell apart, she decided to help." "She helped him find us?" Emily asked, stunned. Mason nodded. "She tracked down your school, your mom's workplace. She told him where to wait." Emily leaned back, the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. "The man in the alley. The sandwich. The phone call. It was Evelyn's idea," Mason added. "She told him that the girl meant for him would have a heart kind enough to stop for a stranger." Emily's throat tightened. She couldn't speak. A soft knock interrupted them. The door opened. And there he was. The man from the alley, but no longer ragged. Clean-cut, dressed in a dark suit, eyes full of unshed emotion. "Hi, Emily," he said, voice low. She stood slowly, her breath catching. "Dad," she whispered. He nodded, stepping closer. "I've missed so much. But I'm here now." Tears blurred her vision as she stepped into his arms. And just like that, the pieces of her world finally came together. What would you have done if you were Emily? Sometimes, it takes just one small act of kindness, like sharing a sandwich, to change your life forever. Emily's journey reminds us that even the people we least expect can carry pieces of our past, our truth, or our future. Now we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And what part of Emily's story touched you the most? Was it the mystery of the man in the alley? The helicopter landing? Or that emotional reunion with her father? Everyone sees something different in a story like this, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, your theories, or your favorite moments. Who knows, you might even inspire the next chapter. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss tomorrow's episode. Trust us, things are only just getting started. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the biggest answers begin with the smallest moments.